Hey everyone, thanks for jumping back into the Cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Bitcoin pre-FOMC. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the sale on Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. Let's go ahead and jump in. So, we are about to have FOMC on December 10th, and what you'll notice is that the markets are expecting a rate cut, right? About an 87% chance of a rate cut. Let me go ahead and reload this to see if it's changed. But about 89%, almost 90% chance of a rate cut now. Now, this goes against what Powell said, where he said he does not want people to think that a rate cut at the December meeting is a foregone conclusion. Despite that, markets are pricing in a rate cut. And despite what Powell said, I feel like we have to go into this meeting expecting that there will, in fact, be a rate cut. Normally, when you're only one day away from FOMC, these probabilities are often pretty accurate. And furthermore, the Federal Reserve doesn't really want to surprise the markets, generally speaking. That doesn't mean that they can't hold rates constant, but it seems likely that they will, in fact, lower interest rates to 3.75%. Furthermore, the Bank of Japan is likely to raise interest rates. I would argue there's about a 75% chance the BOJ raises rates at its next meeting. Now, this can be somewhat problematic. It sometimes does lead to capitulation lows in the market. For instance, in July of 2024, the Bank of Japan raised rates while the Fed cut rates, and it ended up leading to this low in the market right there. Now, I do think we will build off of a low relatively soon, but I think it will likely resolve to a lower high, unfortunately. And the reason for that is because Bitcoin historically tops in Q4 of the post-halving year. Q4 2013, Q4 2017, Q4 2021, and most recently, theoretically, Q4 of 2025. However, unlike the prior peaks, this peak we topped on apathy, more similar to the 2019 peak where we just slowly went down. Now, while I think there could be a capitulation low sometime following the Fed cut and the Bank of Japan raising rates, and hopefully we can get some type of counter trend rally moving in early 2026, you should know that after the 2019 peak, the counter trend rallies were not really that impressive for a little while. So I do want people to be aware of that. You know, a lot of times when you have these cycle ending bull market, or when you have the end of the bull market, usually Bitcoin will rally back up to its 50-week moving average within a few months, right? So you can see that we did it in 2021 and also, of course, in 2018. This, I guess, was 2022. So 2022, 2018. Unfortunately, it did not happen in 2014, but we got relatively close, right? So we likely will see that at some point, but I don't really expect that to happen until 2026. So the Federal Reserve, again, will lower interest rates. Now, the argument, though, is will it have a major impact? You could argue there's this thing called the neutral rate, and that when the Fed funds rate is above the neutral rate, the economy slows down, it contracts, and when the Fed funds rate is below the neutral rate, the economy expands. No one really knows what the neutral rate is. A lot of people disagree on it anyways. Some people say the neutral rate right now is closer to 3%. I approximate it as the 2-year treasury yield, right? So that's what I say is the best estimation for it is the 2-year treasury. Furthermore, if you look at interest rates, what you'll notice is that interest rates, the Fed tends to track the 2-year yield, right? So the Fed listens to the market. The market tells the Fed what to do. The Fed does not tell the market what to do. And if you zoom out and we look at this on, say, like a 2-month basis, what you'll notice is that wherever that 2-year yield goes, the Fed funds rate tends to follow, right? Normally, the 2-year yield moves first, the Fed funds rate moves with it, and you can see that's happening once again. Right now, the 2-year yield is around 3.6%. And so if you do approximate that as the neutral rate, you could argue that even with a 25 basis point rate cut to get us down to 3.75%, we're still, technically speaking, above the neutral rate if you treat the 2-year yield as the neutral rate. So just something to keep in mind. A lot of people this cycle were really hoping for, for other moves in the market, to see the lower market cap stuff rally. And one of the reasons you could argue that they didn't in the way that a lot of people wanted them to was because monetary policy was, as Powell would say, sufficiently restrictive. What's more interesting at the meeting is not the Fed cutting. It's more so what they say about future cuts. Because what actually led to the capitulation low by Bitcoin and also the stock market back in August of 2024, it wasn't just the fact that the Fed cut rates and the Bank of Japan raised rates. It was more so there was a lot of people worried about a recession back in the summer of 2024. Right? There was a lot of recession worry. We had some recession indicators going off. Maybe the Somro recession indicator went off around that time. I think the unemployment rate had just printed 4.3%, which was a pretty big move up. So it wasn't just the fact that the Fed was cutting rates. It was the fact that we were pricing in a lot more rate cuts further out on the curve. And so when that happened, it led to the unwind of the carry trade, right? And so this time, while the carry trade will unwind slightly with the Bank of Japan raising rates and the Fed cutting, it might not be as problematic as it was back then. Primarily because there's a really high chance Powell's going to come out and push back on many more rate cuts. Powell is likely going to be replaced as chair of the Federal Reserve in May of 2026. And while he might cut rates one or two more times, I don't think he is going to cut aggressively because he does not want to be remembered as the chair who allowed inflation to come back under his watch. That doesn't mean they're not going to replace him in 2026 and then put someone in who's going to run it hot and reignite the animal spirits. But I think that is what Powell's resolve is and what you should do, what all of us should do, right? Rather than try to figure out or hope for something, trade the market that you have, not the market that you want, right? And so right now, monetary policy doesn't really support the idea of a massive alt season like a lot of people would like. That doesn't mean you can't see any altcoins go to new highs. I'm sure some will. A lot of them, there's been plenty of bear markets where some altcoins go to new all-time highs, even on a lower high by Bitcoin. So I want you to be aware of that, but I would not go into it assuming you're going to have a full-blown alt season. And one of the reasons for that is if you actually go look at one of the indicators we talk about all the time, the social risk, all the alt seasons occurred after social interest was trending up for a while. But this cycle, social interest has been trending down. Now, it's hard to know if that's because people have gotten tired of all the meme coin and cash grabs. Like that might be the reason. But you could also argue that last cycle social interest went down, and then after QE was really moving and after interest rates dropped a lot, everything changed. But we're not at that point in the cycle, and it's important to trade the market that you have, not the market that you want, right? I mean, it would obviously everyone would like everything to just go up only, but that's not how to be a successful investor, right? You have to be open-minded to other outcomes, and you have to defer to the market when it's telling you something else. But those are my views about the markets going into FOMC. We'll see what Powell has to say, and we'll provide an update afterwards. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and check out the sale on Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.